The circle of villagers knelt in unison, heads bowed, their chants rising and falling like the rhythm of the wind. The fire crackled, sending shadows dancing across the baobab's immense trunk. All eyes were on the elder standing at the center, gripping the staff that glimmered faintly under the moonlight. The air was heavy, filled with both reverence and unspoken fear. The elder's voice wavered, his words choked with urgency as he leaned on the staff. "The burden we carry is not what it seems. The staff." His breath faltered, his legs gave way, and the staff clattered to the ground as his body crumpled lifelessly. Gasps filled the air. The crowd froze, their eyes darting between the fallen elder and the staff lying undisturbed on the sacred earth. The villagers began to murmur as the staff emitted a soft, ethereal glow, its light stretching across the gathering. A faint hum grew louder, vibrating through the ground beneath them. A woman whispered, "A sign from the ancestors." Another voice cut through, sharp and trembling, "Or a curse." A man rose to his feet, his voice booming above the crowd. "The ancestors are angry." His words sent ripples of panic through the villagers. Mothers pulled their children closer. Elders began calling for offerings, anything to appease the unseen forces that now seemed to loom over them. Beyond the fire's light, hidden among the trees, a figure stood silent, fists clenched. She watched the scene unfold, her face a mask of grief and doubt. Her thoughts raced, torn between mourning the elder and the familiar bitterness she felt toward the village's endless rituals. Quiet whispers started circulating among the crowd. "The keeper before him, he never returned," someone muttered. "Betrayed the ancestors," they said, came another reply. The hushed gossip grew louder, and the name of the fallen elder's predecessor lingered heavily in the air. The commanding voice of another man silenced the murmurs. "Enough!" he bellowed, stepping forward. His gaze swept over the crowd with calculated authority. "The staff must choose a new bearer," he declared, his eyes narrowing. "One worthy of restoring balance." The faint glow of the staff seemed to pulse in rhythm with the man's words. A young voice broke the tense silence, filled with determination. "I will take it." A figure stepped forward, head held high, his steps deliberate. The crowd turned, murmurs of approval and unease rippling through them. From the shadows, a sharp intake of breath. A voice, fierce and trembling, rose above the noise. "No, you don't know what you're doing." Her protests were ignored as the young man reached for the glowing staff. A rasping voice cut through the commotion, silencing the crowd. All heads turned to the frail figure who emerged from the edge of the gathering. Her words were barely above a whisper, but they carried the weight of 1,000 storms. "The staff does not choose the strongest," she said, her eyes piercing the young man. "It chooses the one cursed enough to survive." A chilling stillness settled over the crowd, broken only by the crackling of the fire. The young man hesitated, his hand hovering above the staff, as her words hung in the air like an unbroken spell. Whispers carried on the evening wind, filling the air with talk of ancestors and curses. She stood apart, her eyes scanning the uneasy crowd. The words about tradition and the ancestors' will grated against her thoughts. Beneath the chants and prayers, she heard something else, fear, blind and unyielding. Her lips tightened. What power could the staff hold if it only brought death? Near the sacred ground, another voice rose, bold and eager. He spoke of duty and courage, of proving his worth to the village. His youthful confidence shone brightly, but it burned too fast. Determination flickered in his eyes as he stepped forward, head high. He ignored her warning glance, even as her heart clenched. At the edge of the gathering, a man watched with a calm that felt too deliberate. His gaze lingered on the staff, calculating, careful. His words soothed the worried crowd, but there was a sharpness beneath them, a hidden edge. He spoke of the ancestor's will and the need for strength, yet his eyes betrayed something else: ambition. The village gathered to honor the fallen elder. Incense rose with the chants swirling in the air. Offerings were laid before the sacred tree, but unease rippled through the crowd. The staff lay untouched, its faint glow casting long shadows. Whispers of doubt mingled with the rituals, but no one dared to speak them aloud. Later, by the fire, a voice broke the silence. The griot began his tale, weaving a history of prosperity and ruin. The staff, he said, once brought great blessings, but those who sought to wield its power paid a price in blood. The villagers listened, their faces reflecting awe and dread, the weight of the tale settling over them like a heavy fog. The discussions that followed were anything but quiet. Voices clashed, rising into heated arguments. Some cried for penance to appease the ancestors, while others accused leaders of twisting the truce. Accusations flew, and the fragile unity of the village began to crack. Amid the chaos, the council struggled to regain control. Each member spoke of responsibility and wisdom, yet their words masked personal agendas. Fingers pointed, alliances shifted, and the debate turned to who was worthy of bearing the staff. The council's authority teetered on the edge of collapse. She watched him from a distance, her worry growing. His boldness was turning reckless, his steps too confident. He was blind to the dangers ahead, driven by a need to prove himself. She vowed silently that she would uncover the truth behind the staff before it could claim him. The whispers she followed led her to shadows, to quiet conversations that revealed more than the words spoken aloud. Her questions about her father's death were met with hesitation and half-truths. But she pressed on, piecing together fragments of a story buried beneath years of silence. The deeper she dug, the darker the rumors became. Greed, betrayal, and deception, these were the threads woven into the staff's curse. The elders, the leaders, even those who preached of tradition, all had secrets tied to its power. The curse, it seemed, might not be the ancestors' doing at all. Tensions reached their breaking point. The village was a tinderbox waiting for a spark. Fear and mistrust consumed the people, dividing families and friends. Some turned to rituals for protection, while others whispered of rebellion. The air was heavy with the threat of violence, and the once unified village stood on the brink of chaos. The staff erupted in a blinding burst of energy, its glow piercing the night. The villagers gasped as the light settled on Kofi. The chants of awe began to swell around him, their words filled with reverence. He stepped forward, lifting his head high, basking in the moment. The glow of the staff flickered, pulsing with life. "No! Stop!" The voice broke through the celebration. She pushed her way forward, her eyes darting between Kofi and the staff. Her voice trembled with urgency, but the crowd's chants grew louder, drowning her words. The council stood, firm, their decision clear. Kofi was declared the village's savior. By morning, the celebrations turned quiet. The fields began to wither, their green replaced by a sickly yellow. The animals that once roamed freely disappeared without a trace. The air grew heavy, the kind of silence that swallowed sound. Whispers of fear rippled through the village as the once thriving land seemed to die before their eyes. She approached the leader with measured steps, her voice sharp and accusing. "You knew this would happen. You hid the truth about the staff." He met her gaze with cold calm, his voice low and menacing. "Do not speak of what you don't understand. Focus on your place, or you'll regret it." His words were a warning, but they only strengthened her resolve. The wanderer arrived without ceremony, his face marked by scars that spoke of a hard life. He looked at the staff with weary eyes, as if seeing an old enemy. His voice was quiet, but carried weight as he shared his tale. The staff does not care for good or bad. It feeds on the fears of its bearer, twists them and makes them real. The elder keeper of lore sat beside her, the firelight casting shadows on her wrinkled face. Her words were deliberate, each syllable heavy with meaning. There is a ritual, but it demands more than you can imagine. To sever the staff's power is to challenge the spirits themselves, and they do not part with power easily. Kofi's demeanor shifted, the light in his eyes dimming into something darker. His voice, once steady and confident, grew sharp and unkind. He lashed out at those closest to him, suspicion clouding his thoughts. The villagers who once cheered for him now whispered behind his back, afraid of the man he was becoming. Her heart was heavy with indecision. Every path seemed lined with thorns. To destroy the staff would mean defying everything the village believed. To let Kofi continue would mean losing him to its growing power. The weight of the choice pressed on her like a stone. The truth unfolded like a wound reopening. The whispers she followed revealed the dark reality. Her father's death was no accident. The leader had orchestrated it, using deceit and betrayal to position himself closer to the staff. The realization cut deeper than any blade. The scheme unraveled piece by piece. Kofi was never the chosen savior. He was a pawn in the leader's plan, a tool to cement his authority over the village. Every word, every action had been calculated to keep the truth hidden, to keep the power in his hands. Her resolve hardened like steel. The truth, now clear, could no longer be ignored. She tightened her grip on the staff, her mind set. The path ahead would be treacherous, but she was ready. She would face the leader, protect her brother, and end the staff's reign of terror, no matter the cost. The plan came together under the weight of desperation. They gathered in secret, their resolve stronger than their fear. Each was ready to risk everything. The wanderer shared what he knew of the staff's power, his voice grim but steady. The keeper of lore prepared her tools, muttering words that had not been spoken in generations. The young woman stood at the center, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. They would stop Obade and save Kofi, or they would fall trying under the pale light of the full moon. The symbols took shape on the earth. The keeper worked swiftly, her hands guided by memory and instinct. Her chants rose with the wind, weaving the past into the present. The air grew thick with tension as the ritual began. The leader appeared, his arrival sharp and calculated. He brought guards with him, their faces hard with loyalty or fear. His voice cut through the chanting, cold and triumphant. He spoke of the dark forces he had bargained with, his words dripping with pride. He had made a pact to control the staff, and he would let nothing stop him. Kofi's arrival brought a new wave of chaos. His steps were frantic, his eyes wild. He moved as if possessed, and his voice rang out in a frenzy. He declared himself the ruler of the village, the one chosen by the staff. His words carried the weight of madness, the whispers of the staff, twisting his mind. The confrontation erupted into violence. The leader and the young woman clashed, their fight raw and fierce. The wanderer stood guard over the keeper, shielding her from harm as she worked. The chants grew louder, drowning out the sound of the struggle. Each symbol completed brought them closer to the ritual's end. The truth revealed itself in fragments, a puzzle coming together under the moonlight. The curse was not born of the ancestor's wrath. It came from a betrayal buried in the village's past, a wound left to fester for generations. The staff carried the weight of that blood feud. 8T power misunderstood and feared. A surge of energy pulsed from the staff, casting its light across the group. It wasn't destruction the ancestors had sought, but reconciliation. Their signs had been warnings, their whispers guiding the village toward healing. The realization struck hard, shifting the battle's meaning. The young woman's decision came without hesitation. She stepped forward, her hands reaching for the staff. The keeper's warnings echoed in her mind, but she pushed them aside. The ritual required a life, and she would give hers. Her fingers closed around the staff, its deadly power surging into her. The light exploded outward, blinding and final. The staff crumbled in her hands, its ashes scattering into the wind. The ritual was complete. The village stood in stunned silence, the weight of the moment pressing down on them. The leader's voice faltered as the truth of his deceit was laid bare. The guards stepped back, their loyalty shattered. The villagers turned on him, their anger righteous and unyielding. He had no power left, his schemes unraveled. Kofi collapsed, the madness draining from his eyes. He looked up at his sister, his voice barely a whisper. He was free, the staff's whispers finally silenced. He clung to her, his strength returning slowly. The night ended with a fragile sense of hope. The staff was gone, its power broken forever. The village, scarred but alive, stood on the edge of a new beginning. The young woman looked out at her people, knowing their journey toward healing was just beginning. The glow of the staff faded into nothing, its power dissolving into ash. The wind carried the remnants away, leaving the village in a stunned silence. Eyes darted from one face to another, searching for meaning in what had just happened. The oppressive weight that had hung over them for so long was gone. The curse, finally broken, left the people breathless and uncertain. The silence was broken by anger. Voices rose, sharp and filled with betrayal. They turned to Obade, their anger fueled by the truth now laid bare. His lies and deceit, once hidden behind authority, were exposed for all to see. Cries for justice echoed through the gathering as villagers stepped forward, their unity stronger than his fading power. Forced to his knees, Obade's fall marked the end of his rule, and he was cast out to wander, stripped of his position and pride. Kofi stood apart, his shoulders slumped under the weight of his actions. His eyes met Nala's, filled with shame and regret. He approached her slowly, each step heavy with unspoken words. He knelt before her, his voice soft but resolute. I was wrong. I let it consume me. Forgive me. She watched him for a moment before reaching out, lifting him to his feet. Their bond, though strained, held the promise of healing. The villagers, now leaderless, faced the aftermath of years of fear and division. The wounds ran deep, but the shared experience brought a fragile sense of unity. They spoke of rebuilding trust, of finding a way forward together. The work would be long, but the seeds of hope had been planted. The people turned to Nala, there, gratitude evident in their eyes. They called her a savior, a hero who had saved them all. She shook her head, stepping back from the weight of the title. Do not look to me, she said. We must look to each other. The staff is gone. We no longer need relics to guide us. Her words, though firm, carried warmth, urging them to embrace their own strength. She walked alone to the place where her father rested. The air was quiet, and she knelt beside his grave. Her hand rested on the earth as she whispered words only. He could hear. The truth of his death no longer haunted her. Peace settled over her heart, a quiet acceptance of what had been and what could now be. The stories of the staff, of the curse, and of those who sought its power would not be forgotten. Nala resolved to preserve the truth, to ensure the mistakes of the past were not repeated. The village's history, she decided, would not remain a burden, but a lesson. The truth would be written, not hidden. The first rays of the sun touched the village, casting a golden light over its people. They gathered, their voices hopeful as they spoke of a future free from fear. The young and old alike shared ideas, weaving together dreams of unity and purpose. The shadow of the staff was gone, and a new dawn rose over the village, filled with the promise of what they could build together. The ashes of the staff lingered in Nala's mind, a stark reminder of what blind faith had cost the village. She thought of the chants, the offerings, and the reverence that had guided so many lives. The relic they worshipped had brought nothing but fear, mistrust, and death. How easily they had turned to it for answers, and how deeply they had suffered for their unquestioning belief. Her thoughts shifted to the truths she had uncovered. The betrayals, the greed, the lies buried under the guise of tradition. Facing them had not been easy. Each revelation had felt like a blow, but ignoring them would have been far worse. She understood now that truth demanded courage, not just to uncover it, but to act on it. It was a heavy burden, but one she would carry willingly. As she looked at the villagers gathered to rebuild, she felt a glimmer of hope. They spoke not of relics or rituals, but of unity. Old feuds seemed to fade as they worked side by side, their shared purpose stronger than their differences. The village's true power, she realized, was never in the staff. It was in their ability to stand together, guided by values that transcended fear. The faces around her turned to her with admiration, but she shook her head. Leadership, she thought, was not about power or glory. It was about the willingness to sacrifice, to make choices others could not. She had done what was needed, but the path forward was theirs to walk. She urged them to lead themselves, to find strength in each other rather than in symbols. Her steps took her to the grave where her father rested. The weight of his death no longer pressed on her chest. She placed her hand on the earth, whispering, a quiet promise to honor his memory through truth and action. The shadows that once haunted her had lifted, leaving only peace in their place. She turned to the horizon, where the first light of dawn painted the sky in soft gold. Behind her, the villagers spoke of new beginnings, their voices carrying a tone of hope. The younger ones, unburdened by the fear of the past, spoke of ideas and dreams. The staff's shadow was gone, replaced by the warmth of a shared purpose. As she walked away, she knew her journey was complete. She had planted the seeds of change, and now it was their turn to let them grow. The past was a lesson, not a curse, and the village stood ready to embrace the future. The sun climbed higher, bathing the land in light, and with it came the promise of renewal.